Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psych.D, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psych.D is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. Simply put, our primary relationships play a big part in how happy we are. Yet, our brains are not really designed to be good at relationships. Instead, our brains are designed for our survival and energy conservation. So although our brains are the most complicated structures in the known universe, they need training to be good in relationship. And as anyone in relationship will tell you, they take work. And because those brains like to conserve energy, it's easy for us to fall asleep at the wheel while we're in relationship. It's no wonder we get into so much trouble in our relationships. I am so grateful to the thought leaders who are at the forefront of couple counseling. If I had to choose a superhero team of the biggest contributors to improving relationships, without question, this episode's guest would be one of them. This will be my second interview with Dr. Stan Tatkin, and if I have my way, there will be more. Stan has trained hundreds, if not thousands, of therapists in his psychobiological approach to couple therapy model, which has improved the lives of countless people on our planet. Stan's latest book, In Each Other's Care, just came out, and it is awesome. To quote relationship expert and Super Psych guest Terry Real, Stan reminds us that taking care of one another, of our union, is taking care of ourselves. So listen in as Stan explains why and how to be in each other's care. Dr. Stan Tatkin, who has asked me to call him Stan, a hearty welcome back to Super Psych.D.
How are you, my friend?
I am so happy to be with you, is how I am. I'm doing great. I just saw you briefly as you were presenting in front of an international couples conference, and I was just loving hearing what you had to say.
Thank you.
Been looking forward to this meeting for a few weeks, and I'm just so happy to have you back, man.
It's good to see you.
One of the things I was sharing with a colleague of mine is that my wife and several other of our mutual colleagues have been a part of your PACT training, which to get the kinds of accolades from seasoned clinicians, like what I hear about these people who've been providing couple therapy for decades and doing it well, and saying that you have actually blown their minds in spite of the hundreds, if not thousands of hours of education and experience these people have. Just want the listeners to know that he's not just beloved by Alanis Morissette, which is fantastic, who has endorsed one of his books, but the providers who learn from you, and by extension, their clients who benefit from your hard-earned insights. Just thank you to begin.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you very much. Working in a vacuum and also going in and out of imposter syndrome, it is really hard to tell. I'm passionate about what I'm talking about, but a lot of time it's just a strange thing. But thank you very much. It's very, it made my day. I'm going to go out and get some ice cream then.
I'm so glad. And not the I must eat because I'm so needing to fill a hole, but to celebrate, it sounds like.
Just to celebrate and reward myself.
Fantastic.
Adam said something nice and anointed me, so I'm going to eat some ice cream.
Fantastic. Well, I will join you from 300-ish miles north. Well, let's get into it. When I first heard the title of your new book, I was beyond stoked because this is one of the ideas that comes from PACT. And I believe PACT stands for Psychobiological Approach to Couple Therapy, which is actually a training that I will be taking in the future, for sure.
Absolutely.
There's no question about it. Yeah, man. So in each other's care, it's just cuts to the heart of everything you've ever talked about. And it's a phrase you've used. How did you come upon the title? And what did you hope to basically get people to take notice of by choosing that title?
It's really an interesting and really good question, because in each other's care came from how this whole thing started in understanding our species, but understanding neurobiology and how we're wired, that couple therapy has emphasized self-regulation and kind of like going the way we reacted in our culture, in our field in the 70s, the Gestalt prayer, right? Reacting to a lack of autonomy, independence, self-identity, and so on. And then we swung too far in the direction of I, me, and my, and one person thinking and denial of dependency. So in each other's care comes from the realization that in human pair bonding and in the primary attachment system, which in adulthood replicates the earliest primary attachment relationship, is that we're wired up close to regulate each other better than we regulate ourselves. So self-regulation is a function of the prefrontal cortex, which isn't really online until about 10 to 12 months of life. Before then, we're being externally regulated by others. So self-regulation comes out of external regulation. We don't do anything ourselves that isn't done for us, with us from the outside in. And then we interactively regulate, even as infants. But it starts with external regulation, and then we interactively. You can't tell whether a baby or a caregiver are leading or following. They're just in a dance. So I can, if we were close up, and we're close up because of the camera, but if we're even closer, I can see what's going on in you if I'm paying attention before I know what's going on in me. You can see what's going on in me before I know it. And you can see what's going on before you know what's going on in you. Therefore, nature has wired us to interactively regulate close distances, which means couple therapy is more like this than this. And this was
So you're using your fingers to illustrate something for the listener. So rather than us actually connecting, if you could articulate,
we're crossing
rather than
I'm taking care of myself with you. You're taking care of yourself with me. We're taking care of each other. And that is the proper way that we regulate in close relationships or in close up. And so since that is the case, it's not correct to focus too much on self-regulation in the couple situation because it's a different system. It's more efficient for me to track you and regulate you in real time than it is for me to regulate myself. I'm actually, by regulating you, I am regulating myself because we're connected psychobiologically and everything we do affects the other person instantaneously. And so it's a dance. It's a little like walking on a tight wire together. If we're under stress, where we have to keep an eye on each other, and I have to keep an eye on you, because if you start tilting, I have to compensate. I have to do something so that we both don't fall. And that's really the essence of one of the reasons that relationship fails in all unions is due to the manner in which we will interact every time when one or both of us is under stress. Not when we're feeling good, but when we're under stress. And that is really when we're walking that tight wire, we have to keep our eyes on each other in order to keep each other well regulated, or we'll come undone. And so in each other's care extends beyond the micro, which is nervous and autonomic nervous system issue, to how we should think that we are fully, if we're unionized and we have a common goal and a shared purpose for being unionized and a shared vision for where we're going, and the level is a level field where we have the same things to gain and the same things to lose, we then have to operate in a manner that considers both me and you at the same time. That's called a two-person psychological system. Most of us operate as a one-person system, depending on our childhood, depending on how we orient ourselves. We will all fall back to a one-person system if we're under enough stress. And that's where we get into trouble with our relationships.
And I can't think of anything more important than our relationships. As a seasoned psychologist and a person who has loved being in good relationships, that is. This is, I believe, something like H. Jackson Brown once said in his little book of life secrets, something akin to, above all else, be careful who you choose as your spouse, because from this one decision comes 90% of your happiness or misery.
And safety and security.
And then I'm thinking about, and I've got a lot to say about this before I get into my question. My apologies, Stan. But
no, it's good.
First off, there are so many things going against being in a good relationship. We have lionized and prioritized the wrong things. We have prioritized principles and being right over being connected. We have prioritized being individualistic. And we know how that cowboy movie ends. He walks off alone into the sunset,
Yes,
maybe with
dies
a
of
buddy,
cancer.
but it dies of cancer, right? It's not very good. And then we went through this period of just bashing codependency, which made sense on some level, but it was throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And then I studied quite a bit of Japanese language and about Japanese culture, only to learn that they have an idea called amae, which basically means in each other's care to some extent. Where, yeah, you're going for it. Go for it.
No, go and finish.
And I've got a few other things to throw out, and I'm going all over the place, man. That Bud Light commercial at the Super Bowl was one of the best commercials I've ever seen in my life. And in it, you see Miles, the guy from Whiplash and Top Gun fame, and his girlfriend, or his wife, I believe. And she's sitting on hold, waiting with the waiting music that we've all heard a bajillion times. He goes to the fridge, gets out a couple Bud Lights, and they start dancing together. And they make the music into the soundtrack for their dance. Talk about like co-regulation. Talk about a moment where she was miserable and he brought in some levity and helped her rock the moment. That could be the ad for Pact, as far as I'm concerned. But last but not least, another thing that goes against it. You've mentioned in your book that nature does not care about relationships. This is one of these. I mean, by the way, folks, there are gazillion quotable quotes in Stan's work. But one of them that I just pulled out was, nature doesn't care about relationships. And so we have to override that. And we live in this Western society where we want to have dominion over things. I remember listening to Alan Watts describing somebody conquered Mount Everest. And he said, no one should ever say they conquered Mount Everest. They should say, thank you to Mount Everest for allowing me the conditions to climb you. And I thought that was far more elegant and way consistent with what you're suggesting. And I'm just thinking about the number, I mean, just the avalanche of things going against being in relationship, things that circulate through the zeitgeist, and how you are saying, let's be more thoughtful about this and maybe override some of our tendencies and some of the lionized and prioritized ideas that aren't actually serving us for a meaningful life.
Yeah. The big problem is the human condition. The big problem is our species. We're great and we're terrible. We're smart and we're stupid. We're kind and we're evil. We're generous and opportunistic. We are caring and self-centered and hopelessly selfish. We are friendly to people we know and we otherize people we don't know. That's xenophobia. That will always be there. It's wired into our species. And so we have features and bugs. And most of those features don't translate well to relationship, such as the comparing and contrasting mind. Is very good for hunting and gathering, very good for picking fruit, but not good for happiness, because that comparing, contrasting mind leads to disappointment and greed and not enough. We have a brain that's always aware of what's missing. Very good for if you're out in the field finding a place to camp, finding out what you need and what you're missing, food that you're missing. Terrible for happiness because we're always lamenting about what we don't have. And so these are just a small portion of the things that we deal with our mind that mislead us all the time and causes us to fight and misunderstand each other. And so I think this is as much about understanding our nature and accepting it as it is, what we actually do. And that's take terminology like codependency, co-opt terminology that's meant for clinicians or physicians or psychiatrists or science and use it as a cudgel to otherize each other through social media. And that's what happened with codependency. It turned into you're weak or you're with a narcissist or you're a borderline, all these things when originally meant that you're an enabler with your alcoholic partner.
And yet there is that reality that exists as well. You talk about gaslighting. You talk about a phenomenon, forgetting what you called it, but where, for example, you have an agreement and then you get mad at your spouse around the agreement that you two shared. Yeah. And it's kind of like when you're in college and you have kind of the stoner roommate who doesn't really pay on time and you hook him up with this month's rent. And then next month, when you come to collect the 2 months rent, and he's, dude, is that all you think about is money? And it's kind of a cousin of gaslighting. And you actually brought that into the book brilliantly. And there are so many ways that we basically sabotage love and connection. And it's rather overwhelming. And yet codependency can be a bad thing, particularly if we're enmeshed so much that we have no differentiation. How do you kind of walk that fine line between enmeshment and non-differentiation and co-regulation and being in each other's care?
Right. So differentiation, individuation, separation, autonomy, these are all words to describe development, right? Being your own person. We are dependent animals. So to be independent can be misconstrued as that we're lone wolves. We're not. We don't do well that way. We go nuts in isolation. We write manifestos and put tinfoil on our windows. So that's crazy. We're not self-made people. That we never were, we never will be. We can't love ourselves before we love another person. That's not possible. It doesn't hold water. And so we have a lot of bullshit ideas about us, ourselves. One of them has to do with independence or interdependence. So codependence, we might think of as an unfair social contract. It's a one direction only. I don't expect you to do the same thing I am prepared to do. This is not an equal, fair partnership of shared power and authority. That's because I tend to yield that in favor of not losing you. And therefore, I'm willing to, again and again, since childhood, take care of you in hopes you will do the same for me, which of course doesn't happen because the lack of self-entitlement actually encourages another person's opportunism and abuse. So if in an interdependent relationship, it's term-based, it's based on conditions, I'm here not just for love, I'm here because I want something from this union. You should want it too. Let's agree on this and make sure it happens. Because if you don't treat me the way I expect and that I'm prepared to treat you, we have a problem and I could fire you for not adhering to basically an idea that we have to remain fair, just, and mutually sensitive. Otherwise, we start robbing and cheating each other, and that's when war begins. So secure functioning is a system of equality or inequality if people agree to that. It's basically you and I are not coming together simply based on emotion, because emotion is not going to carry the day. Emotion gets us into the relationship, but can also get us out. We come together to organize this amorphous thing called a relationship, which actually doesn't exist except in our heads. Therefore, we have to, like unmolded clay, we're sitting across from each other, constantly molding this thing to our satisfaction. It has to be that way because that is what guarantees it's one of the things that guarantees longevity and happiness, right? Not love, but a sense of that we're in this together and we are both generals, two legislators, two bosses, two co-creators. We're it. We decide how this is going to work. We create our culture, not our parents, right? And that kind of thinking gives way to respect, earned love, and happiness because we're bound to the idea that we have to please each other or we'll get into trouble. We have to serve each other or we won't get served. We have to make sure we both win or we are both going to lose. That's a fact. And this really follows basically social justice theory as it applies to free and fair unions, that unions can only exist if they're free by getting each other on board because we both share in the mission and the vision. We both want this thing. We both want to avoid this thing. So we're here together. We're together to protect each other from the environment or the others, however we think. And we want to profit. We want to create something that's beyond just survival. So survive and thrive. We can only do that as a team. In any team, in any band, in any dance troupe, in any business, we have to understand our differences, work together, find consensus where we agree and where we're the same, or we will fight and we won't get anything. Nothing is accomplished.
And as you're speaking, I'm just recognizing that so many of the principles that you apply to the primacy, as you call it, of the couple really have dendrites and applications in other places. Obviously, yeah, you're smiling as I say this, obviously in the corporate world, in government, in any place where people are interacting. These principles are not just a vacuum in love. And I'm also taken with the idea that you have really factored in not how we should be, but how we're built.
Yeah.
Not just that we are feeling creatures, but that we need to think.
Yes.
And you've even come up with a clever acronym, PEPPER, to kind of help people get into that coordinating mindset. I was wondering if you could unpack PEPPER and how people can use PEPPER in their relationship.
My dear colleague and friend, Allison Howe, actually came up with PEPPER on a retreat that we were doing, and she was assisting in Tuscany. And so we kept reworking it because what should it stand for? And so what it came to be is predict, plan, prepare. And the R is revise as needed or repair as necessary. And what this
is so good.
It's what we are. We're the only species that can do this, by the way, and we don't. Because of energy conservation, we're lazy creatures, and we will often just walk right into the same situation when we could have predicted it and planned and prepared to change the outcome. No, we're too distracted and we forget and we don't work together and we don't plan. Yeah, but that is a part of the human condition in case you haven't noticed with global warming or the economy or anything else that we do, pollution. We're penny wise, pound foolish. But we have the capacity to predict what could go wrong, and that's science. We often don't listen to scientists. And so a couple should be able to plan a wonderful vacation, a wonderful dinner with the in-laws or the family, even though there are problems, right? Even though these are difficult people, difficult situation and so on, no problem. You and I have a system where we always put us first. We think first about our good time, yours and mine, our safety and security. Our vision is that by the end of this trip or the end of this dinner, we high five each other because we did really good, we did well, and we're fine. Other people's mileage may vary, but ours doesn't. So us first, and then we think about others, and we plan and prepare and predict what they could do to interrupt our peace and our good time or our safety and security. How are we going to prevent that from hurting us without hurting them? This is a clever way that we work together to handle first each other and then everyone else, which is the idea that a couple, if we want to look at it this way, a couple, if the center of the universe that is co-creating a whole new country with its own fealty and its own sovereignty, we decide we're the leaders, we're the big kahunas, we're the generals, we're in charge of everyone and everything. If we want to think of it that way, the logical then first priority is us. Because if we're not...
By the way, define us. It's the two people in that primary relationship?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you and I are not in good order and we're not fully resourced, meaning we're good working together, nothing else is going to be good. Our kids aren't going to be happy. No one wants to be around us. We're not as creative. We'll die earlier. We'll get sick earlier than we should, or perhaps not at all. And we're going to be unhappy for sure. So this is a tactical, logical orientation, structure, hierarchy that makes sense. It doesn't mean that other people don't matter. Far from it. It means that we have to be good first or nobody else can be.
Totally.
And so that's an idea, a culture that we abide by, and that informs what other guardrails, principles that we must abide by in order to be in fidelity with that idea.
I want to wedge in on something because it's so important. You said two things that I just want to echo. One of which is, and you say it in the book many times, but those of us in neuroscience who have some understanding of neuroscience know that our brains are really only here for our survival and to do things with the least amount of energy. So we're lazy. We come upon our laziness, quite honestly. And so much of what we're talking about requires work. It's not fun. It's like getting a root canal. It's really, really unpleasant, but necessary. And the other thing that you said just now, and I really want to echo is, and I'm going to say it the way you said it in the book, is that when two generals are arguing, their soldiers die.
Yeah.
And these two generals really need to sync up. And the same is true for a mom and a dad, or however the parental configuration works in a household, that when things are tense or bad between them, there is a ripple effect, and it is palpable, very palpable to the children. In fact, one of the best ideas that I've ever heard of is that if you really love your children, love your partner, and the axis around which your children's world will spin is the quality of the relationship you share with that partner. So this is a big deal. It's the least selfish thing we can do is to make sure that we are good in our primary relationship, because the stakeholders will feel it.
Actually, if we really want to look at it and do a deep dive on selfishness, which human primates are by nature, even our altruism is based in selfishness.
Sure.
Two-person operations is based in selfishness. My fate is tied to you. Therefore, it's in my best interest to treat you well. Because if I don't, I'm in for a heap of trouble, right? I've just made my life more difficult. So whatever happens to you happens to me. Whatever effect I have on you should matter to me because it's going to affect me immediately or very soon. So all of this is and should be selfish because that is the entry point to being pro-social. I'm selfish because I'm forced into being pro-social, which doesn't mean I give up myself. It just means I have to consider you at the same time I'm considering myself, or I will suffer. You understand?
100%. And I would even call that enlightened self-interest. I'm guessing you would too.
Enlightened self-interest, yeah. Yeah. The only thing that we can say is remarkable about humans is that in an emergency where we don't have any time to think and we see somebody in a burning building or under a car and so on, we will risk our lives.
Yes.
We will do it. And that is quite different than the other things. So nature has built in a survival mechanism that what happens to you happens to me. And that's where the empathy comes in. That's where I need to rescue you because there by the grace of God go I. And that's where we identify, right? So nature has built in the attachment system to keep us glued together so that we can raise offspring and we can protect them and protect each other from the dangerous world around us. The problem with that attachment system is that it's often confused with love. So I panic if I'm feeling I could lose you. That's not because I love you, because I can panic even if I don't love you. It is an existential threat to my survival on a very primitive level going back to infancy. So that very glue that holds us together is also something that can keep us together when we ought not to be. If the deal is bad, if you're abusive, if we're not equal partners, if we disagree on where we're moving, those are perfectly good reasons to not unionize or to de-unionize, whatever the word is, because we won't be happy. But the attachment system is a mandate, biological mandate that says, I can't quit you. And the problem is that if I can't quit you and you are making me unhappy, that's when I get violent. That's when we get aggressive. That's when I start to beat it into you, which is not good. Because if I can't leave you based on really important ideas, that's what's best for me. I'll stick with you and I'll beat on you because I don't have any other option. And so that's what us therapists have to worry about, is that the attachment system, while lovely in holding us together, can also make us make really stupid decisions that thwart our best interests, which is like a cancer cell waiting to metastasize. And that's a very hard thing to work against, the I can't quit you biology. So it cuts, everything in nature cuts both ways. Nature's indifferent for some of the stuff it builds in. Neuroplasticity can be great or it can lead to madness and mental illness.
Sure.
So that's why I say nature's indifferent in this sense. Nature doesn't care about relationship, just continuation of the species. We care about relationship.
100%.
And so that's how we invented religion. That's how we invented laws. That's how we invented principles of how we're going to work together, because we're animals.
So let's talk about that, the I can't quit you notion versus real love. And I think embedded within the I can't quit you equation is that we allow ourselves to be extorted by the other person out of fear of loss rather than a true desire to connect.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you would just share some characteristics of what you as a couple therapist would define as love versus actually some type of a pseudo love that's actually fear of loss.
Going back to the great philosophers that have parsed different kinds of love, agape, and so on, that's important to revisit. But when it really comes down to it, everyone's definition of love is different. Even if they verbalize the same thing, our language is imperfect. And so my fantasy of how I'm using the word still is different, perhaps, than yours. It can range from infant dependency love of feeling cared for and special to narcissistic feeling of being admired. I feel loved and loving. Could be because I have wave of romantic feeling and comes about me every now and then, and I love you, and then it goes away. It could be anything. But earned love is something we do know about. And that is we are doing things for each other based on a shared purpose, not feeling. And we end up doing the right thing or the best thing, even when we don't feel like it. That's earned love. That is something that goes far beyond what we automatically do in our nature. We're doing something for a greater purpose, on a greater good. And we have the discipline to do that, which grows us up and makes us better people. The off the factory line human primate, while pretty terrific in the animal world, is also pretty shitty. Consider your 2-year-old. A 2-year-old is the off-line human primate. You want to give your 2-year-old an AR-15 and all the rights of an adult. You'd be crazy to do that because everyone's going to be dead. So all of this is true of us as well. And that's why systems always have guardrails along with that we're all focused this way on what we want. Because if we don't have
and
that,
you're focusing
on each
outwards. Other. And just for the listener, he was pointing horizontally toward me.
Yeah.
We're focused toward each other rather than...
We need shared purpose, shared vision in order to dissolve our differences, because that's where we find sameness. We are, in fact, different in a multitude of ways, and we tend to focus on how we're different and how we disagree. Real consensus is looking where we agree and where we are the same. And that's how couples need to govern. They need to think bigger. Where do we agree? Well, we know where we disagree, and big duh, that's everybody. I tire of hearing, but we're so different. Yeah, the sky is blue. So what? People are annoying and disappointing and irritating and a burden. Yeah, so what? What else is new? This has been around since the beginning of our species. So how do we organize? How do we civilize? By agreement, by finding where we are the same, where we agree, and we're in it to win it, and we protect each other's interests. This is the best place to be. We don't want to be anywhere else. We're not being held by gunpoint. Therefore, we have to work together to keep it that way, or there will be dissent. There will be resentment. There will be an accruing of threat or unfairness. And that always comes home to roost, no matter what. That's a function of lack of organization and sloppiness and one person thinking, right? I only care about my interests. Well, what do you think is going to happen next if we're bound to each other?
So from this, I extrapolate that part of your definition of love is the ability to transcend, and it comes in many forms. Yeah, including our wiring towards being self-oriented, selfish, engaging in enlightened self-interest, being willing to transcend our basic programming of fear, our willingness to talk things out rather than just jump to conclusions, our ability to co-regulate, our abilities to, so I think it's kind of a Control-Alt-Delete process of just going into the system and not just going with the defaults, but being willing to go beyond those defaults.
We have to grow up. And we have to build our own character, a sense of something greater than ourselves. And that's why we co-create this shared mythology called a relationship. There was a time in the romantic era that it threatened the church because romantic love was supplanting God, right? Something greater than ourselves. Romantic love is we would die for this, right? We're supposed to die for God.
That's right. Or the king.
Or country. Or the king, yeah. But for this other person, no. That doesn't serve the state or the church. So that was a threat. But rather than die for love, die for placing something at a higher value than yourself, something that you adhere to increase your sense of livelihood, to increase the rewards of life itself. Because like the existentialists say, it has no meaning unless we create it. So what is the meaning we're creating? And are we on the same page? Are we going in the same direction? Because that's sublime. Going in opposite or different directions is war. And there's very little keeping us from going to war at any time with our kids, with our parents, with our neighbors, with our state. We're warlike creatures, survival oriented. And so to not know that is naive and to set us up for trouble. That's also pepper. Not predict that, I love you, Adam, and we're going to get along great. We're going to go into business and we don't need a contract. You're a good guy. I'm an honest guy. That's naive because we're not planning for our devils, because devils we are, along with being angels. And so that's dumb, right? And that's going to ruin our relationship. And so this is just being smart and laying out the groundwork for protecting us from each other.
As I hear you say this, one of your basic ideas that I think is so great is that we're all pains in the ass. And what's amazing also is I heard someone like Brad Pitt, I don't remember who it was, in an interview saying this was some person upon whom a gazillion projections are created, including this would be the greatest person to date. And the guy said, if they really knew me, I don't think they'd really want to date me. I am a pain in the ass, essentially, just like you said. And when we're going into business together, we tend to wear rose-colored glasses and forget that at some point during a stressor, we will be a pain in the ass. And that, once again, it's that transcending thing, the willingness to transcend the fact that whoever is with me has to accept the full package deal. And I have to also be willing to transcend my programming and be better.
What keeps you and I together over the long run is attraction, not fear. Fear of acting unfairly, because if I act unfairly, I should fear the consequences because I'm now giving you permission to act unfairly too.
Totally.
Right? Or to fire me.
The precedent, yeah.
So but this is the best game in town. This is the best deal in town. We're both perfectly imperfect. We know that. Everybody is. But we have a deal. We have a way of working together that constantly pays out. We are totally transparent with each other. We trust each other with our lives. And yet we know we can do stupid things for which we apologize and we fix and repair. That's fine. But there is no better out there. And we've earned it every day by doing the right thing when it's the hardest thing to do, by doing what we decided is the best thing when it's the hardest thing to do. That's hard to price out because the world will never do that, but we will, based on agreement. That keeps us here for the long run because we're constantly adjusting and shaping as we move through time to keep it fair, just, and sensitive, and to please each other and to create win-win situations, to make sure that neither of us loses, gets left behind. We protect each other at all times, radical defenders of each other. And our fidelity is not about affairs per se. It's about fidelity to our agreements and to the culture that we co-created. This is our relational ethics, our relational morals that we created. Therefore, we're more likely to adhere to it. Otherwise, we're betraying ourselves. This is the recipe for how any system exists through time.
Absolutely amazing. And one of the things that also kind of sucks about having our brains in the way that they are designed is that it's not particularly efficient to do some of the probings that your system requires. And I'm so glad that you brought them to our awareness. One of them is that we will treat our partners amazingly well during the beginning phases of the relationship. And over time, we will habituate and we will assume we know who they are without really asking, like, who are you really? Because we think we know, and we won't really think about like how we express ourselves because, by now they've been with me for so long. Gus, I'm a package deal. Deal with me. I am what I am. That's what Popeye said anyway. And I find myself thinking, this is so important.
Yes.
We don't know who our partner is. In one of your dialogues, one of the partners said, close your eyes and tell me, what am I wearing? And tell me, where's the mole on my body? And the partner didn't know. Yep. And what are some questions that perhaps veteran couples could benefit from asking each other on a given walk, date, meal, whatever?
First of all, we naturally automate everything. Everything that is new and novel is going to be relegated to something called procedural memory, which is automation. And that's a very important function in terms of neuroscience, in terms of the brain, because the very fancy critical thinking areas of our brain spend a lot of resources and actually heat the brain. And so we can only do it for so long without getting very fatigued and losing resources. Therefore, we conserve energy by automating everything, including each other. And therefore, our day, every day, is astonishingly unconscious, operating by memory and pattern recognition, but not thought. That's an important thing. It makes our day easier, but also we can get bored with each other and we can take each other for granted. So the last time I really studied your face, Adam, was 3 months ago. I just hold a picture of your face and I think I know your face. I do know your face, but do I know everything and have I seen it change? No, I haven't, because I didn't bother to look. So one place is start building in gazing at each other. That's how you fell in love. Gazing at each other, looking at each other, really looking, being present through the visual field, looking at every detail. You won't go wrong doing this. That's how we fall in love, is by paying attention. And so paying attention and being in the present moment, especially through the visual field, or it can be through the tactile field if you want, is what enlivens us and makes us realize that the person we think we know is actually a stranger in lots of ways. And that makes them exciting again. So we look for novelty in the ordinary, which is something we understand through our smart brain. Otherwise, we don't understand it, and we will just think we know things and not really pay attention. Also, there's a mistake in thinking we're family. So what happens is that all couples will sooner than later abandon the regular formalities that are usually afforded to strangers. Like, do you have a moment? Do you mind if I talk for a second?
Now a good time.
Are
you open for business?
I just come in. I say,
exactly.
Hi, or I call you from the other room. What? Or do all sorts of things that are entitlements that are offensive and should be to you because I think you're family. Therefore, I can do whatever I want. No, that's a big mistake. There are reasons why we have formalities, is so we don't mistake each other as the enemy. So we don't assume things that we ought not to assume. And that's what keeps us straight. So there are so many caveats that have to do with the human condition that if only people really understood it, they would stop blaming each other and themselves and start doing something about it.
And you actually summoned up that kind of axiom that Yoda said in The Empire Strikes Back, kind of something akin to there is no try, there's only do or do not. You don't like the words try or working on. You say do or. And
you can vaporware. If I'm trying to reassure you, I'm going to stop beating on you because I'm working on it.
How do you put that into action instead? How do you operationalize that very beautiful idea of doing versus trying or working on?
But when apologizing, I apologize for my behavior, not what you thought I did. I apologize. The relationship comes first. I fall on my sword. That's more important. The relationship's more important than my being right or my reality. That comes first. And that is a leap because we don't usually do that. If I'm repeating something that's irritating you, I need to stop that soon because I'm creating a problem, a long-term memory in a crude sense of threat and unfairness that's going to get me. So it's in my best interest to tell you, I'm going to forget because I'm an idiot and I'm automatic just like you. This is obviously a reflex. I'll do it again. So I'm giving you permission right now to call me on it, cue me, prompt me, remind me, and I pledge I will cooperate immediately, change my tone without pushback. That is awesome. I'm incorporating you to help me, to help train me out of something. And it acknowledges our automation and our reflexes. I'm not doing it purposely. I'm just doing it thoughtlessly and automatic. And I'll do it even more when I'm under stress. Therefore, I'm giving you the reins to govern me. And I will yield and I will cooperate. The collaboration part is, what are we going to do about this to stop it? That's what you need to know, is not I'm trying. Don't do it.
I love that. And one of the things and I'm almost hearing the word family, as you used it earlier, as being, you are an extension of me and not a sovereign nation unto yourself. Yeah. And I don't even recognize your sovereignty when I yell from across the room, basically not being willing to imagine that maybe you're doing something else. I want to go with my final question because I want to honor your time as promised. I've already asked you the miracle question in our last interview, but I'm going to ask you something slightly different. If this book were to have a great effect on people, what is your deepest wish that In Each Other's Care will have on couples and the public at large?
This book had a very strong intention. It wasn't to make your complaints unique. It was to get you to understand these complaints are universal. Human primates are assholes and nice people. We're all assholes. That's not the problem. The problem is, do you have a structure that you've co-created? If you didn't, you're flying a plane that's not built. That's dangerous. So think, co-construct, create the house that you live in, create the home you want, not the home you think the other person should do, right? That's one. Two, examine the manner in which you are interacting. You think you're friendly, you are not. You think you are getting your message across, you're probably not. You think your memory is correct, it isn't. You think your perception is accurate, it isn't. None of that's true. All that's true is that the two of you have to treat each other as, at the same time, I have to consider myself and you at the same time, or I will compel you to do the same. That's in every corner of the world where there are humans. Anytime I just think of myself, I talk about what I want, what I worry about, what I don't like, without considering you, you're going to do the same. You'll be compelled to do it. That's human. That's not personality disorder.
Totally. I will meet you there.
Yeah. Everyone will do it. It's a reflex. And so understand how we get each other in the weeds and how we don't think big. We think too small. We get into arguments that are unnecessary. We don't move forward because we don't know where we're going. We didn't decide where we're going. So any system that doesn't focus on a third thing that we want, that we're going to, will start to feed on itself. That's called civil war. It's happening in our country because we now lack a narrative that people believe in, that they want to aspire to. It's now tribalized and otherized. And that will happen in families and between partners if they don't understand how this works.
Dan, your work is so important. And I'm so grateful for the contributions you've made to our field. And I am delighted to know you. And anybody who thinks that we're an island to ourselves, just think of the wise Bill Hader, my very favorite impressionist. And one of the things he talks about is that he can't help it. He starts talking the way other people start talking when he's around them. And we are all designed that way to some extent. None of us probably can do the impersonations that he can do, but we all do it in the context of our relationships, in even our peripheral relationships. We end up talking a little bit, we sync up. That's the way our mirror neurons work. And if we can just get ourselves more in sync at home and find ways to use that same technology outside the home, I think we'd have a much better place to live.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I'm working on it myself. It's hard for me too, but there's nothing else to do. There's nothing else that will work.
And I love that you mentioned that in your book. And every couple therapist who I know who's being honest, myself included, is a work in process and will be till the day we die. And there will be moments of great surprise, great humility, great vulnerability, possibly some shame and guilt mixed in. Yes. And it's our job to really, really be real with those things and just try to do better than we did yesterday is all I can say.
Yeah. Anyway, always a pleasure.
Oh, my man. Can't wait to see you.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
All right, brother.
Okay.
This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.